Hello friends and welcome to my new video. In today's video I'll be talking about a filmmaker, a legendary filmmaker in fact, and he is someone who not just made great movies but in fact almost single-handedly through his films created and enhanced an entire genre. The genre being the breezy romantic musical films, something which Hindi cinema, exemplifies so well. And this particular filmmaker was the one who almost defined this genre. The filmmaker I'm talking about today is none other than Nasir Husain and some of his wonderful films. Nasir Husain, when he started his career, he started it with Filmistan under Shashadhar Mukherjee, and he was primarily in charge of the writing department. And working under Filmistan, he wrote stories like Anarkali, Munimji, and Paying Guest. They were the hit films that Nasir Saab wrote. And Shashadhar Mukherjee perhaps was obviously impressed with what he saw and asked him to direct his first film, which came in 1957, and it was the trend-setting film Tumsa Nahi Dekha. Tumsa Nahi Dekha was trend-setting in more ways than one. Apart from being Nasir Husain's debut film as a director, Tumsa Nahi Dekha was also almost a relaunching of Shami Kapoor as a leading man. Till then, Shami Kapoor had a very sedate, lovelorn image, which was mainly because of his movies like Laila Majnu, Shiri Farad, etc. And it wasn't a very successful image. And Nasir Husain decided to give him a complete makeover and projected him as the rebel star, the star who rebelled against the big three of Dilip, Dev and Raj. And Shami Kapoor had a new hip look and a swag, and he became this instant heartthrob with the tremendous success of Tumsa Nahi Dekha, and a new star was born. But Tumsa Nahi Dekha also marked the beginning of a wonderful journey as a filmmaker for Nasir Husain. His storytelling was simply superb, as was his understanding of music. Tumsa Nahi Dekha had some wonderful music with O.P. Nair as the music director, and the movie was a runaway hit. In fact, Tumsa Nahi Dekha was such a big hit that a couple of years later, in 1959, Shashadhar Mukherjee again asked Nasir to direct another movie, and this time Nasir Husain came up with Dil De Ke Dekho, which even till today can be considered the blueprint of all breezy romantic musicals. I mean, it's an absolutely superb movie. It's fun to watch even today. And as regards the story, it's the same story as Tumsa Nahi Dekha, with a few minor tweaks here and there. But that was Nasir Husain. He never really bothered about the story. All he wanted to do was make an entertaining film that enthralled the audience for 2.5 to 3 hours. And that's precisely what Dil De Ke Dekho does. It again stars Shami Kapoor and a debutant heroine, Asha Parekh. And the music this time was by a youngster, Usha Khanna. And again, like Tumsa Nahi Dekha, Dil De Ke Dekho had some super hit songs. And there were 8 or 9 songs, and each and every song is a memorable song, is a hit song. And the film turned out to be yet another super hit for Nasir Husain. After Dil De Ke Dekho, Nasir Saab decided to branch out of Filmistan and start his own banner. And he formed NH Films, Nasir Husain Films, with its iconic tagline, "Kya ishq ne samjha hai, kya husn ne jana hai, hum khak nashino ki thokar mein zamana hai." And then the banner unfolds to show NH Films, as in Nasir Husain Films. and you know that you're going to be there for a 2.5 to 3 hour ride of full-on entertainment and fun and enjoyment, because that's what Nasir Hussain stood for. And the first movie under his banner was the immensely popular Jab Pyar Kisi Se Hota Hai, this time starring Dev Anand as the leading man, and by then his favorite heroine Asha Parekh as the leading lady. And just like his earlier two films, Tumsa Nahi Dekha and Dil Deke Dekho, Jab Pyar Kisi Se Hota Hai had some absolutely wonderful music, this time composed by Shankar Jaikishan. And the end result was the same, yet another super hit. After Jab Pyar Kisi Se Hota Hai, Nasir Saab made his second film in around 1964, I think. And the film this time starred Joy Mukherjee and yet again Asha Parekh. And he got back O.P. Nayyar Saab to compose the music. And the end result again was exactly the same as his earlier films. Phir Wahi Dil Laya Hoon was yet another super hit, another feather in Nasir Husain's cap. And the amazing thing about his movies was, in terms of story, there was hardly anything new that he ever said. You know, what started off in Tumsa Nahi Dekha was more or less followed, almost identical in Dil Deke Dekho, in Jab Pyar Kisi Se Hota Hai, in Phir Wahi Dil Laya Hoon, with a few minor twists and turns and changes here and there. But overall, the story was almost secondary. You had good-looking heroes and heroines, you had wonderful locations in Kashmir or Nainital or some really picturesque hill station, and you had fabulous music. You had some brilliant comedy. And as a cinegoer, when you went to see a Nasir Hussain movie, you knew you're in for entertainment, and he gave you dollops of entertainment in his movies. Another super hit, Phir Wahi Dil Laya Hoon. After Phir Wahi Dil Laya Hoon, Nasir Saab worked on two movies simultaneously. One which he directed himself, and one, for the first time, he had an outside director for his banner. The film that was directed by the outside director was none other than the cult movie Teesri Manzil, and it was directed by the extremely talented Vijay Anand. Teesri Manzil, of course, is a landmark movie in the history of Hindi cinema. And the amazing thing about Teesri Manzil is, although it is a Vijay Anand movie, it's a thriller, a genre which Vijay Anand was an expert in. Teesri Manzil also has ample doses of the Nasir Hussain touch. In terms of some situations, in terms of some comedy scenes, it has Nasir Husain's unmistakable touch. So, Nasir Saab had a lot of attention to his movies, even if he wasn't directing it. He made sure that any movie coming out of his banner would have the Nasir Hussain touch, which Teesri Manzil did. And what a landmark movie Teesri Manzil is. Now, along with Teesri Manzil, the movie that Nasir Saab was himself directing was a slightly different movie from the regular brand of Nasir Hussain movies. It's perhaps because somewhere inside him, maybe, he did have this inclination of being taken slightly more seriously as a filmmaker. And it's that thought process which led him to make Baharon Ke Sapne in 1967, starring Asha Parekh in the lead role and a relative newcomer called Rajesh Khanna. Baharon Ke Sapne was very, very unlike a regular Nasir Hussain movie. First of all, it was in black and white, when he had already progressed to color with Phir Wahi Dil Laya Hoon and Teesri Manzil. Baharon Ke Sapne was in black and white, and it was a much more serious and somber movie compared to his earlier films. And it's a fine movie. It's a very good movie with some excellent performances by Rajesh Khanna and Asha Parekh. But somehow it didn't do very well with the audience, and the movie flopped at the box office, and it definitely did feel bad for Nasir Hussain to have a flop after having such a successful career. But I think Nasir Saab realized that the trick was to always give the audience what they expected from you. I don't think anyone expected a serious, somber, you know, gloomy kind of a movie from Nasir Hussain films. They wanted to be entertained. They wanted to, enjoy those 2.5, 3 hours. And Baharon Ke Sapne was quite a grim movie. It had some wonderful music by R.D. Burman, who by then had become a regular with Nasir Saab. R.D. Burman's association with Nasir Hussain films started with Teesri Manzil. And Baharon Ke Sapne was also composed by R.D. Burman and had some fantastic music. But overall, the audience felt cheated. They didn't expect Nasir Saab to make a serious movie, and Baharon Ke Sapne flopped. With the flopping of Baharon Ke Sapne, Nasir Hussain decided to go back to his tried and tested formula of breezy romantic musicals, and in 1969 came up with Pyar Ka Mausam, starring Shashi Kapoor and Asha Parekh. And once again, like his earlier films, Pyar Ka Mausam was the same story rehashed with similar situations, similar sequences, only a different hero. And some wonderful music again by R.D. Burman. And Pyar Ka Mausam turned out to be the super hit which brought Nasir Hussain back into the reckoning, after the flopping of Baharon Ke Sapne. Pyar Ka Mausam turned out to be a hit, and Nasir Saab was back. And then he made his movie in 1973, which turned out to be an absolute super duper hit. And the movie was Yadon Ki Baarat. And Yadon Ki Baarat was the first time and the only time that Nasir Hussain worked with Salim Javed. And the amazing thing is, in 1973, Salim Javed wrote two almost identical scripts where a young boy witnesses the murder of his parents and grows up to take revenge on his parents' murderers. They were identical scripts almost by Salim Javed. Both the movies released in 1973. One was directed by Prakash Mehra, Zanjeer, which sort of created Amitabh Bachchan's angry young man image. And Zanjeer was this powerful and serious and action-packed movie. And the other one was Yadon Ki Baarat, which had its doses of action and revenge and vengeance. But it was also a Nasir Hussain film, which had loads and loads of entertainment and romance and song dance and comedy sequences. Dharmendra played the role of the elder brother who has all the action and the revenge. And the romance and song and dance was left to the younger brothers, Vijay Arora and Tariq. And it was a super hit. It was one of Nasir Hussain's biggest hits, Yadon Ki Baarat. Following Yadon Ki Baarat, Nasir Saab worked on a new script for a couple of years, and by the time the movie was ready, it was ready to be the biggest blockbuster from Nasir Hussain films. And it was the 1977 release, Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi, starring Rishi Kapoor, Tariq, Zeenat Aman, Kajal Kiran, Amjad Khan. And Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi was this mega blockbuster hit for Nasir Saab. It had some absolutely amazing chart-topping music by R.D. Burman. And there was this brilliant song sequence in the movie, which was a dance competition. And there was a medley of 4 or 5 songs used in that competition. And it was the first time something like that had ever been shown on Indian screen. And the people were absolutely amazed to find not one, not two, but 4 different songs, all fitted into one sequence together. And it was this absolutely mesmerizing effect it had. And one of the prime reasons for Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi being the blockbuster that it was the dance sequence medley. And R.D. Burman had, a group of singers like Mohammad Rafi Saab, Kishore Kumar Saab, Asha Bhosle ji, and R.D. Burman himself, who sang these songs. And they were absolutely super hit songs, super hit musical. And there was nothing that would stop Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi from becoming a record-breaking hit. There was the title song, which was a qawwali, one of the most famous qawwalis in Hindi cinema, Hai Agar Dushman Dushman Zamana Gam Nahi. And there was also this wonderful solo song by Mohammad Rafi, Kya Hua Tera Wada, which won him a Filmfare Award and also I think won him a National Award for Best Song. So it was musically a blockbuster. In terms of box office collection, it was a super duper hit, perhaps the biggest hit of Nasir Husain films, Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi. After Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi, Nasir Saab announced a movie which was his most ambitious venture till date. Having been in movies since the early 50s, Nasir Saab always had a desire to work with the legendary Dilip Kumar. And he announced his next venture, Zabardast, which had an absolutely enviable cast of Dilip Kumar, Asha Parekh, Dharmendra, Zeenat Aman, Rishi Kapoor, Tina Munim, Raj Kiran, Kajal Kiran, and Amjad Khan. The film was to be written by Nasir Saab's long-time regular Sachin Bhaumik, and it had music by R.D. Burman. So Zabardast was touted as Nasir Saab's magnum opus and a movie which was planned on a huge canvas. But unfortunately, after a couple of days of shooting, both Nasir Saab and Dilip Kumar Saab realized that they were temperamentally not suited to work with each other. And because of creative differences, they decided to part ways, and the movie was shelved. That was a jolt for Nasir Saab, to having to scrap such an important movie, such a movie so close to his heart. And unfortunately, he went into a bit of a recluse after Zabardast was shelved. But he bounced back again, and he wrote the script and made his next movie, which was aptly titled Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai, in 1982, 81, 82. And it was Nasir Saab's comeback, as if to say that he wasn't done as yet. He was still going to make his kind of movies and entertain people. Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai had fantastic reports, and it was touted as the next blockbuster from Nasir Saab. The highlights of Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai were the sets, in which the song and dance sequences were picturized. The sets were mainly the handiwork of Nasir Saab's extremely talented son and future director Mansoor Khan. And people were talking about the sets and its brilliance. And as I said, the initial feedback and the report was that Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai was the next blockbuster. Unfortunately, Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai flopped. And it was the first flop that Nasir Saab faced in his kind of movies. The only other flop he had was Baharo Ke Sapne, which was a completely different kind of movie he attempted. But Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai was trademark quintessential Nasir Husain, and that flopped, and that hit him hard. I think the movie audience was changing at that time. Video piracy was coming in. People were not going to the theatres as often as earlier, and also maybe Nasir Saab's type of movies were now finding less and less of takers. So it was a combination of all these factors which led to the flopping of Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai. Of course, having said that, today Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai has a kind of a cult following and is one of his most popular movies. But at the time when its success would have meant something to Nasir Saab, it really didn't do well and it flopped. Nasir Saab decided to try yet again after Zamane Ko Dikhana Hai, and he launched Manzil Manzil. Originally, he had Rishi Kapoor in mind to play the lead role, but for whatever reasons, Rishi Kapoor wasn't available, and he made Manzil Manzil with Sunny Deol and Dimple Kapadia in 1984. However, Manzil Manzil flopped. It definitely wasn't vintage Nasir Husain. I think this movie was the first sign that Nasir Saab was losing his touch. There were moments and there were a few sequences which had glimpses of the old Nasir Husain, but otherwise it was not the same anymore. You know, that magic, that charm had gone. Even R.D. Burman's music, although did have a couple of popular songs, it wasn't much when compared to some of his earlier work for Nasir Saab. And Manzil Manzil flopped as well, and Nasir Saab knew that maybe his time was running out. He did make another movie though after Manzil Manzil, and this was Zabardast in 1985. It was perhaps the old Zabardast revamped, and this time he had Sanjeev Kumar, Tanuja, Sunny Deol, Jaya Prada, Rajiv Kapoor, Rati Agnihotri and Amrish Puri in the lead roles. This was a Nasir Saab movie for an outside producer, for Mushir Riaz, producers Mushir Riaz. And whether it is the same story as the original Zabardast or not, one doesn't know, but going by the star cast, it looks pretty similar. It looks as if it's the earlier film that was supposed to have been made, the same script as that. But anyway, Zabardast flopped as well, and that signaled the end of Nasir Husain as a director. He decided to hang up his boots and not make any more movies. He continued writing scripts though, and he wrote the screenplay for the next Nasir Husain film's presentation, which was Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak, and which was directed by his talented son Mansoor Khan and made Amir Khan and Juhi Chawla into stars. He wrote the screenplay of Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. He also wrote the screenplay for Jo Jeeta Wohi Sikandar, the film after Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak that Mansoor Khan made. So Nasir Husain did, he stopped making films in 1985, but he was very much involved in making movies through his son. And the amazing thing about Nasir Husain is he perfected the genre of the breezy romantic musicals, which is such a quintessential part of Hindi cinema. The songs and the romance and the dance and the entertainment in general. And if any one filmmaker symbolized all of that, it was Nasir Saab with his work, with his body of films, which even today, 35 years or more after he directed his last films, all his movies are immensely popular today, whether it is the OTT channels or the video circuit or the DVDs. And his movies and songs from his movies and the music of his movies will, I think, always remain popular, will always remain relevant to Hindi movie lovers, because Nasir Husain was one true legendary filmmaker. That's it for this video. I hope all of you enjoyed the video, and I'm sure most of you have seen most of the movies that I have mentioned in this video. In case there are a couple of movies you've not seen, no worries, they're quite easily available on DVD or on YouTube. Do watch them and rediscover the genius Nasir Husain. That's it for this time. Until the next time, bye for now.